Try again.
What's going on, fam? Hey, what's happening? What's happening? Yes, I still have the overlay screen on. That's because the computer's doing that crazy thing where it freezes from time to time. And I hate when it comes on screen with me frozen in a really stupid position. So I'm actually looking to see if I can make it free. If I can make it freeze where I'm looking halfway handsome. Hold on a second. Let's see what we got. All right, it looks like we're live. So I am all good with that. How y'all doing tonight? I see a lot of people popped through, and that made me really happy. I saw some really good comments. I see so many of you watching from the YouTube space. That's what's up, because only by watching, subscribing, and commenting on the YouTube channel are you eligible for the giveaway at 1,000 subscribers. At 1,000 subscribers, we're giving away the Storytime with Julian lit bag. The lit bag is a collection of books that I have personally assembled. Some of them are even autographed because, yes, I went out and made sure that we were able to find autographed copies of books. And some of them are STWJ faves, some of the books that we've read from and been like, ooh, this is a good one. And we just keep going back to it. Put those in the bag. Some of those are brand new things that we haven't read on the show yet. Some of them are books that I bought exclusively for the lit bag because they're for you. Is for you, the loyal viewers, the subscribers, the lovers, the dreamers, and you who have been here with us throughout all of this time, and who subscribe and help to make the channel grow. So all you got to do is subscribe on YouTube, comment on the video every time not every time you comment, but for every video that you comment on, you are entered once, and all of those are gathered up, and then one random winner is selected. Now, additionally, as we continue to grow and develop and we buy more books, we're going to do book giveaways, but those giveaways are only going to happen on the YouTube channel. So if you just want to watch and chill and cool and vibe, Facebook is the place to be. But if you want to get your hands on some free black lit, YouTube is the place to be. You feel me? All right. So just kind of keeping that in mind, and also be aware as we continue to grow, we're going to be making some changes in the platform. Ultimately, we are going to do live readings once a week, and we're going to do a pre-recorded read for the other day of the week. So we'll still have content on Thursdays and Tuesdays, but at a certain point, we're going to have to shift that over. So, and I believe it's going to be the Tuesday that's going to be the pre-recorded with the lives on Thursday. Still kind of feeling that out, but that's what we're working toward. But don't feel like you're going to be left hanging, because there's going to be even more content. Some of you have already heard the word about the podcast that is in development. We've already done a couple of recordings for that. So there's more stuff to come real soon. Storytime with Julian is not just a show. It is now a platform, and there's going to be more coming out of that. Now, for those of you who were here previously or prior to this, whichever one of those, but don't mix them. For those of you who were here previously, we just went through a really quick run through of a bunch of the new books that we have on the Storytime with Julian shelf, books that I'm looking forward to cracking spine on and digging into with you. And my promise to you was that for this episode tonight, I was going to pick one at random. So what I did was I put the stack over on the table, I reached behind me, and I yanked. And whichever one fell to the floor was the one that I was going to read from. Now, two books fell. So we've got Dark Matter Reading the Bones and Black from the Future. Now, originally I was going to say, well, I'll let the group decide, but this show is an autocracy. And also but also, there's always such a delay. It doesn't make sense to sit here twiddling my thumbs in silence, waiting on you all to say, ooh, I want the red one. Ooh, I want the black one. So what I decided to do was try and pick some really short ones from each one and give y'all a taste. So we're going to have a sampler plate tonight, all right? We're going to do a little bit of a sampler. First, let me go ahead and greet some of y'all, because I am so happy to see y'all here. I see that Judy Lee is with us. I see Angela Rains. I see Angel Monique. Over here on YouTube, I see Foxy Kitty and Nicole Tia. What's happening? Good to see you. Benny B in the house is in the house. I see Erica Goodman and Melanie Monroe. I know who Melanie Monroe is, but it's good to see you again. Anyhow, it's just good to see all of y'all. Now, who got Prosecco coming? So I got some Prosecco, making some Bellinis, and okay. I haven't checked my email today, so I know I just missed the invitation, because big brothers like Bellinis too. It's not just for dainty folk. It's not. I love a good Bellini. I like peach Bellinis myself, but it's not to say I would say no to a strawberry one. But it's fine. Like I said, I haven't checked my email, so I'm sure the invitation coming. It's probably already there. I have to check my spam folder. All right, so So out of dark matter reading the bones, I flipped through to see what was a nice short one I could find. And I was so excited to see that we've got stories from some names that we know. Nalo Hopkinson is in this book. What? Charles R. Saunders is in this book. W.E.B. Du Bois is in this book. Walter Mosley is in this book. Tananarive Due is in this book. And who else did I see? Oh, Nnedi Okorafor. There's a new last name on this one. Mbachu is in this book. Now, the story that we're going to read from this book, we're reading it, one, because it's super, super short, and two, because when I read you this title, and if you know anything about me, you will know why I could not pass this story up. The title of this story is Anansi Meets Peter Parker at the Taco Bell on Lexington. It's the Julian story. It's a story written specifically for Julian. Now watch me read it and it'll be whack. But we're going to see. We're going to find out together. I'm excited to discover this with you, and I hope you're excited about it too. This story is, look, this is the story. This the first page of the story. This is the last page of the story. First page, last page. First page, last page. So this is a super short story. So let's see how it gets down, all right? Anansi Meets Peter Parker at the Taco Bell on Lexington by Douglas Kearney. So I'm at the Taco Bell on Lexington across the street from Pizza Hut and Panda Express. You know the one? I'm trying to eat my 69-cent, times is hard, bean burrito when this cardigan wearing MIT looking motherfucker shutterbug grubbing chilitos like a deep throat and flick chick clicks a pic of me. Now, crazy ain't my way. Figure fool on some Ansel Adams kick. Could be snapping shots of fast food spots and other Americana caca for the New York Post Daily Planet of the Times. So I egg him, rip the plastic packet of semi-salsa spread red on the skid marked tortilla Taco Bell called bean burrito, times is hard, when click, Mr. Shutterbug has another private kind of Kodak moment with me in it. I say, do I look like trying the banks? Do I look like Tyra Banks? Best slow your roll or I'll crop your shot. Good. He reached in his pocket and passed me a business card. Peter Parker. With the Daily Bugle? Never heard of you. 6-inch thick glass mask face, but I know he a white boy when he say he doing research on quaint and obscure local characters, all National Geographic and shit. I wave 8 arms, say, I look obscure to you, motherfucker? He do a no offense crawfish, say, I mean, I've never seen anyone with your style. I'll pay you if you let me take some more pictures. Figure Mr. Pentax packs stacks of De Niro and bean burritos, times is hard, ain't been tasty for a while, and cash for a couple of shots. Why not get over? So we step outside. I profile against the wall like the baller I was back in the day, tell him how I used to be a player swinging hut to hut, chick to chick, friendly as Daddy Long stroke in the hood. He smiled like it's all good. Quick click and pick, slip me 2 Benji, shake all my hands, and he down the street before I could say chalupa. 2 weeks later, Benji looking more like Abe, and I'm back at the border ordering bean burritos, times is hard. When out the window, I see some jackass in red and blue spandex swinging down Lexington with some half-ass spider moves. Next day, same clown get front page of the Daily Bugle. Spider-Man. Got his own book, TV show, movie, and everything. Ain't that a bitch? But I ain't bitter. Ain't nothing new. I mean, you saw what happened to that nigga Brer Rabbit after that Bugs Bunny shit. Couldn't be me, because, see, it's like I told you, crazy ain't my way. And thus endeth the story. That was it. I kind of feel like I need to read the whole thing again because I'm like, wait, what? Like I'm legit having a what the hell did I just read moment, but it was in a good way. Neptia07 says, sounds crazy enough to work. Angela Lee Rain says, it's starting off quickly. It did start off quickly, and then it ended quickly. That was it. Kitty Foxy picked up on that half-ass spider moves. Julie Lee said that was awesome. I live in Boo. Latricia says Brer Rabbit versus Bugs Bunny. L. Jack said that shit was fly. I am inclined to agree, brother. That shit was indeed fly. Judy Lee said that was awesome. Again, I agree with that. Red and blue spandex, and Latricia loved that shit. I love that shit too. I feel like that story just happened to us. And okay. I can't wait to see what else is in this book. We're gonna pick up the other one, Black from the Future, and I'm gonna flip through right quick and see what we can see in terms of shortness and kind of give you guys some insight as to who's in here. Now, these are probably most likely new names to you all. At least that's what the book back said. But let's see what we got. We got Joel Gomez, Kyle Carson, Alma Levon Rice, Lauren Sherrill, Eden Royce, K.E. Bell, Vernita Hall. Vernita Hall has two stories back to back. Let's see. Let's look for one of these two stories by Vernita Hall look real short. Let's see what those are talking about. And after we read those, we'll maybe pick back up Black Matter. The first story by Vernita is called Nightcrawler, and that's on page 87. So flip with me, will you? Oh, okay. That's right. I forgot. This book actually has some poetry in it as well. So when I see something that's real short, there's a good chance that it's poetry. But I've already flipped to the page, so we don't really typically do poetry on here, but let's see what happens. And we've got what do you call it? An endorsement for Joel Gomez. So that might be what we use to direct the next one. Let's see. Nightcrawler, Vernita Hall. Another lonely evening slowly creeps. Toward dawn again my haunted sleep. Still I wait for you. What witchery binds me, holds me mute, your night mystery. My blood runs cold to ponder losing you, but I'm drained. I'm damned if I'll share your silver tongue, if I bare my fangs. I'm sure I could rip out a throat or two. Your twilight travel? Nail the coffin closed. Keep true to me, or you may surely find yourself gravely transformed into a creature of the night, the spectral kind. Can't we transfuse this bloodless relationship, please? One more chance. I've staked my heart on it. That was Nightcrawler by Vernita Hall. And we said we'd do the next one too, so I'm going to keep my word. Tidal Wave. They tried empathy. Blubbering meats posed for photographs, cute baby pictures. Mothers swimming with their calves, they clicked their peace songs, blues ballads from the deep stage stand-ins beached on the shores of self-sacrifice. But the hunts continue, despite their protest from the land of the rising sun, the final insult to date. Now the waters irradiated. Crudely steaming, dark plumes flow every color but green. Somewhere under the rainbow, the Gulf screams. Such pretty poison our art cooks, a chunky soup of plastic spills percolating into the muktuk. From toxic brew marinating the krill, for our profit-hungry taste it's more expedient just to dump the wastes. More expedient, that's the main ingredient. Stir religion into the stew and any spark could ignite the pyre. Let the holy mackerels cough and watch a shrimp hurl a Molotov. Free Shamu to lead the killers, mount armed resistance with the octopi, count on the coral's rock-solid support, our pilots will learn to fly. Burn, baby, burn, blowholes by any means necessary, shell at will Marines, show no mercy to the adversary. But should they rise too late, too overmatched, the martyrs will laugh, surrender to our catch, a final surge of nets, and we'll defeat them. They'll yield their poisoned flesh and let us eat them. Tidal Wave by Vernita Hall. All right, now, somebody said Joel Gomez is the shit. Now, this story, hold on, this might be on the longer side of things. It looks like it is, and that's actually the opening John. Yeah, man. All right, starts at page 9, ends on page 31. That's just enough to close out the show. All right, we're going to give it a shot. Why not? We're going to take a gamble. Y'all rolling the dice with me tonight? I hope so. This is Caramel 1864 by Joel Gomez. I watched my father Solomon scan the road outside of our small house for a sign. It was always uncertain whether he was more relieved when he discovered one or when he did not. He often invoked the name of the Lord either way, but he sometimes appeared too exhausted to remember further prayers. He was a tall man, thinly built, who always looked as if he had important jobs to do. Watching for the sign was one of them. He wiped his delicate dark hand over the tight nap of hair that capped his head before turning to me. I looked away quickly, as I often did, pretending to study my lesson book on the table before me. Now, when I think of my father, it is those fleeting moments that bring his face to my mind almost precisely. The look in his eyes, a mixture of anxiety, excitement, and love. Coiled inside of him was a fierceness that his wiry frame almost concealed, but not quite. And freedom was always his goal. He spoke of it to me and everyone who would listen so often that freedom became a tangible thing, a thing that tastes like berry pie, and it became our name, Freeman, when we settled. We'd come to live in Charlemont before my memory starts, but I do know it followed my mother's passing to the other side. We lived on the small farm for some years before I understood. Our farm was a depot, a place where those, like my father and me, stopped on their way to freedom. No one actually said these words, but the succession of cousins who stayed with us in the years before I turned 14 were innumerable. Each would be called by the same name depending on the age. Men were called Cousin Simon, women were Cousin Delia, and children were Cousins Henrietta or John. I think father decided to use the same names so as not to tax my childish memory. Sometimes it became a source of a smile for father and me. He'd look up and say, "Wonder if we'll have a cousin for dinner tonight." And I'd answer, "Yes, please. May we have them with jam?" It was the purest joy to hear my father laugh out loud. He usually parsed his responses in words as if he never wanted to be surprised into revealing something. Later, I heard the stories of the life of slavery he'd left behind on the plantation, mostly from the cousins who'd visited. One whose skin was so drawn tight by the scars of the lash she could hardly bend over. Another who walked with such a severe limp, I wonder how he'd been able to cross the great distance from the world of slavery to our New England farm at all. By the time I was 14, it ceased feeling like a secret game, and I understood the stark terror the cousins had endured to make the journey north. It was the same terror and grief that had driven my father to figure out to put on my mother's clothes and escape with me in his arms. "We got cousins tonight." "With jam?" He grinned and said, "Cousin Delia and Cousin Henrietta be here tonight." With that, I went to the area where I'd slept to be certain I'd not left a terrible mess. I was by nature quite neat, however. My goodness. The challenges of reading live. With that, I went to the area where I'd slept to be certain I'd not left a terrible mess. I was by nature quite neat, however, I was sometimes prone to leaving my pieces of paper about when I was studying my books. I believe I'd be mite less lonely if I could write things down. I didn't dwell on loneliness usually, but there it was, sitting at the foot of my bed. I heard the buckboard on the road before father did. His hearing was getting thinner each year, which he would never admit, of course. Mr. Leavitt, pale in the dim light thrown by the lantern at his side, helped Cousin Delia down first. She was tall and fair-skinned, almost as pale as Mr. Leavitt. She wore her head wrap drawn tight across her brow, shadowing her eyes. She was very thin, not unexpected given the journey they'd taken. The flight from the south to the north was hardly a nutritious one. Delia reached up to lift her daughter down before Mr. Leavitt could, and the sinewy strength of her arms and back were barely concealed by the dark cloak she wore. Cousin Henrietta was almost as tall as her mother and just as pale. She could have been 11 or 16. It was difficult to tell in the dim light. Mr. Leavitt handed my father a small satchel, barely said good night, and climbed back up the seat of his buckboard. That was unusual. Mr. Leavitt's way was shy but regular. He'd come in to settle his charges, often have a cup of cider to be neighborly, and then promise to return with more victuals. That meant he'd return with the guide for the next aspect of our journey. Tonight, he turned, looking exhausted as if he'd not slept in days. I suppose when he came on Sunday, we'd hear more of what was going on outside our little town. "Good night to you, sir," Mr. Leavitt said. We turned to our charges and offered a small snack. "We kind of tired, sir. If you don't mind, we'd like to—" "I understand, cousin. No tea?" "No." I couldn't see her eyes well, but they didn't look tired at all. Her voice didn't seem weak as her words, but I couldn't tell. So I turned to her daughter. She stared back at me with cold black eyes that were full of fear. That made more sense than the sound of her mother's voice. So I took her hand and led her to the space she'd occupy until it was time for them to move north. Once they were settled in, Father rolled back his blanket so I could sleep in his narrow alcove, and when he slid the curtain across the thick branch which rested at the top of the wall, he checked the bolt across the door and settled on the pallet by the stove. I loved the sound of Father nestling into the wool-covered hay. It reminded me of the barn. And then it was morning. Father was outside, but there was no sound from my room. Father said Cousin Delia had asked that they not be disturbed. They might sleep through the day as well as being exhausted, and she and her daughter suffered from an eye disorder that made bright light hard on them. I put a piece of ham bone in a pot at the back of the stove and then worked outside gathering greens and pulling in more hay for the barn. Father took the horse over to the Fay farm to help with their tilling, and I tried not to listen to the door at my room. I wanted to truly meet Cousin Henrietta. Near dusk, done with my chores around the farm, I ran water over my head like Father always did, and I loved the way it soaked my collar, even though I knew Father would not be pleased. No one could resist the smell of my stew, so I pulled dishes out and set them on our small table. I decided to use our cloth napkins even though it wasn't Sunday. I'd have to wash them before the men came for their meeting, but I didn't mind. I wanted the cousins to feel welcome. Cousin Delia stood in the doorway. I'd seen many different colors of colored people since we'd had the visiting cousins, but something about this Delia was unlike anyone I'd ever met. Coolness rolled off of her like fog rising from the cranberry bog. I smiled, though, and asked if she wanted tea. "Yes, that'd be nice. Elizabeth," I provided. Father had given me Mother's name after she passed. Delia looked at me as if we really were related and said, "How fortunate." I thought that was a confusing response, but people on the railroad often had an odd relationship to words, to space, to everything. It was like they were trying to understand the world when they had only been living in it underwater. Everything is familiar but distorted. Nothing comes easily. "Mama?" Cousin Henrietta stood behind her mother. Her eyes were the same dark pools, but I could see a smile lurking there. This was my favorite thing, to learn who the children were before they were gone. Then for days I'd imagined them mysterious places they might have landed, New York or Canada. I always thought of them as having tea somewhere nice and sunny and cool. The kettle came to a boil and I made tea for them both in our old chipped pot and decided to wait for Father to have mine. Before he returned, Delia announced she wanted to go out for a walk. I told her Father would advise against it, and she sat back in her chair as if he'd actually spoken. "Well then," she said, indecision filling the air. "Father will be home soon and we'll have supper." They were silent. Henrietta smiled, though. "I'm going out to the barn to set the hay for when Father comes back with the horse. You want to come?" I said to her. "Oh, yes, please." Her mother almost said no, but held back inside. I took her hand and said, "Come along, Cousin Henrietta." I was relieved to be out of the house, which was filled up with her mother's anxiety. I didn't know if this was the natural state of mothers since I'd not known one, but it was distinctly unpleasant feeling. "My name is Caramel." "You mustn't say that." "Well, it is, and I don't like being called something else." Once we were inside, I shut the barn door like always, and she looked startled. "Why'd you do that?" "You're supposed to shut the barn door so there's no one coming and going." Something about that made her laugh, and then me too. We laughed until we fell down into the pile of hay and the chickens cackled around us. We lay there smiling at the beams and tackle hanging above us. "I remember this place." How can you remember a place you've never been? I asked. Through dreams, silly. Caramel laughed again, which took the edge off her words. She watched me wield the pitchfork, and I tossed the hay over into the horse stall and smiled like it was the most charming entertainment. Where have you traveled from? I knew I wasn't to ask, but I couldn't stop myself. I ain't supposed to say. Then she looked at the closed door and nestled into the hay like she was in complete comfort. Maryland. Didn't they already pass emancipation? That's what the white man told father. Yes, but we had to get on the road anyway. Oh? I'll tell you the tale because I'm so tired from carrying it all by myself. Mama, she knows, but she don't talk. You can see that, can't you? That was for sure. Cousin Delia hadn't spoken more than 10 words in the 10 hours she'd been in our house. A man, a friend of the massa, used to come all the time and bother me. Cousin Caramel's eyes got even darker as she spoke. He was always fearsome, cold, and he looked at folks like they weren't really there. One night he turned into something. He locked us in the room and he turned me into something. I don't understand. I can't explain exactly, but mother too, he did it to her too. What about your daddy? Didn't he? Massa were my daddy. I stopped pitching the hay then and looked at the girl who was curled up before me. She was both innocent and old at the same time. I knew the cruelties that infected slave owners, but I hate that it had touched Caramel. Do you want to see the secret place? I asked. I might have to show it to them soon anyway, but this seemed like a good time. See here. I opened the gate to the stall and dug the pitchfork around under the hay until I found the seam in the wood floor. I pried until the hatch opened and revealed the trough we dug into the ground below. It was lined with hay and a blanket, but was still not the most inviting place to bed down. We'd only used it once when a relentless bounty hunter had followed some cousins almost to our door, but that had been more than a year ago, and news was that the war was almost over. Let's get in, Caramel said with excitement. I tipped the hatch back and Caramel dropped in like she'd been invited into a grand salon. I looked at the closed barn door and then slid down beside her in the hole. It could not have been more than 4 feet by 6 feet and was about 4 feet deep. I closed the hatch over us and a few sprigs of hay drifted down through the cracks. Caramel started to giggle and put her arm around me. She wriggled in close and whispered in my ear, "Can I tell you the rest?" I couldn't imagine what more there would be. He tried to take me and Mama from Massa Harrywell, 'twere his name, but the missus didn't want to let us go since she loved how my mama could rub people's pain away. I had indeed noticed the strength of her hands and the muscles that lined her arms last night. It seemed unusual for someone so slight. Well, he was determined, and Massa Harrywell finally give us up. Not for cheap, though. Once he was on the road, that man kept messing with me. And one night, Mama just got mad and killed him. Killed him? Yeah. She picked up the small hatchet she keep in her things and took off his head. She said that was the only thing to do. But that meant we really had to run now. She said his people was going to be mad, and we had to get north. The chill that surrounded her mother now almost emanated from Caramel. I hadn't noticed that before. Or maybe remembering the death of her tormentor had dropped her temperature in a fit of emotion. We've been traveling ever since, trying to figure out how to live since he used to take care of that. Take care of what? We better get. Ain't your papa coming home soon? Caramel said abruptly. Yes, I said, more confused than when the story was started. I understood about white men messing with girls. I understood about escaping and sometimes killing. The people who met with my father tried to talk in low tones so I wouldn't hear about dying, but I did. Caramel and I pushed the hatch together and climbed out, brushing straw from our clothes. I realized then that I wanted to give her something new to wear. Her own clothes were caked with mud and dark stains. I determined then to sew something for her. It was a funny dinner we had when we all sat down. Father was almost jovial, and I kept thinking it was because of Caramel's mama. She had snuck out the house while we were in the barn. I could tell because she had brambles on her skirt. But her walk had done her good, and she even laughed when Father told her stories. We were up later than usual talking when she asked Father if she could rub his shoulders. He was startled. Then Caramel said, "The missus really appreciated Mama's shoulder rub. You should, I'm telling you." Father laughed and said, "Well, with a recommendation like that from my little cousin, how can I say no?" With that, he sent me and Caramel to bed, and Cousin Delia rubbed my father's shoulders with those strong hands of hers, hands that had wielded an axe and took a man's head off. I didn't think I could sleep knowing that, but I barely lay down before it felt like it was morning. Caramel and her mama kept in the room in the morning. I went about my chores quietly and even did my studying early so I'd be free to enjoy Caramel when she finally emerged. It did give me a chance to think about what kind of dress I'd be making. I asked Father, and he agreed it would be a neighborly thing to do. When she emerged, Caramel was as eager as I to get back to our secret place where we both felt at home. "Tell me more of what you spoke of yesterday, learning to—" Mama don't want us talking about that. She didn't want me to know your name was Caramel either. I'd come to love the sound of her name. It reminded me of something soft and warm, even though her small body remained chilled as she curled around me under the floorboards in the horse stall. A scent of coolness misted her skin, yet her dark eyes burned hot. When she touched me, I felt warm and something else. It was as if she were touching not just my skin, but my blood and bones too. Like her mother's, Caramel's hands were uncommonly strong. I was pleased at that because I always hated the idea that girls were weaker than boys. I leaned in closer and absorbed the sensation of being held with the strength of Caramel and barely heard her story because of the joy flowing through my body. "I beg your pardon?" "You silly thing," Caramel said, laughing. "You're not falling asleep, are you?" "No, not at all. Please go on." We met her on the road. We were ragged with hunger and exhaustion. Gilda just stepped out of the dark and fed us. She was tracking us, and that ain't so easy because we move pretty nearly fast as a, well, fast. "Can we run together sometime in the wood?" "If Mama says." I didn't want to hold out hope since Caramel's mother, despite her almost total silence, managed to convey a sense that she would not approve of much that Caramel and I would want to do. So her and Mama talked mostly quiet like till Mama said something and Gilda got real hard and scared me. But then her voice was soft again. And I think she told Mama things about how we could make it north without the slave catchers getting us. Then she rubbed my face, smiled, and leaned down to kiss me. But instead she whispered, "You see trouble, call me. You hear?" I think that's what she said anyway. That's when I asked my mama what her name was because I wondered how I was going to call her if I didn't know her name. I hadn't seen a smile like that since he changed Mama. Then Gilda disappeared just like she come into the dark. Caramel stopped abruptly. "Gracious, you think she was an escaped slave?" Uh, I don't think so. She walked like, I don't know, just different. And she talked different too. More like you. And she was wearing men's clothes. I knew she was a woman though, so did my mama. I could see Caramel was feeling sad, so I didn't push her. Her mother probably didn't want her to feel so sad. I suppose that's why she forbade her talking about these things. The next day, Caramel rose shortly before her mother, as if she was as eager as I to enjoy each other's company. She almost caught me as I basted a piece of the fabric that Father had brought home. He'd convinced me to make an apron, not a dress. He said our cousins wouldn't be staying long enough for such a project. I just finished adding a bit of gross grain ribbon that I had from a dress I made for myself, and all that remained was to hem the bottom. I slipped the almost completed gift under my own apron when Caramel appeared in the doorway. Her eyes were bright. "Come, let me redo your hair." "Mama will do it." "No, please, let me." I took the brush down from behind one mirror we had hanging by the reading table and had Caramel sit between my legs on the floor where I used to sit when Father combed my hair. I brushed gently and redid each part neatly so it looked exactly as it had before. I don't know why, but just before I finished braiding, I leaned down and kissed the center part where the sweetness of her scalp showed through. I slipped a small piece of leftover ribbon from the apron and tied the ends of the rose together at the base of her head, making a tiny bow. Oh, I never had a bow before, Caramel said, touching the piece of fabric gently as if she could see it with her fingers. Look, Mama, Caramel said without turning. She'd clearly heard her mother step into the doorway. I was startled since there's usually a huge squeak in the board just before the door, which I had to deliberately avoid whenever I got up in the middle of the night if I didn't want to wake Father. I see. Her mother's voice was the saddest sound. Caramel jumped up and threw herself into her mother's arms. My heart sunk at that sight because it was a vibrant reminder that Caramel belonged to her mother and they would both be gone soon. I went to the stove to stoke the fire so the stew I had been cooking would be done when Father arrived. I slipped the apron under the bedding and went back to the stove, keeping my back to the image of Caramel and her mother, although I would always see it. Mama, we gotta go move hay in the barn now. Miss Elizabeth don't need you underfoot while she doing her work, child. Mama, I help. You know I'm strong. Cousin Delia, I love having Cousin Henrietta with me. Please? All right. The sound of defeat again seemed to hang over her as she sank down into the chair where I'd been combing Caramel's hair. We tried not to hurry out to the barn, but our feet did not obey. Father would be home soon, and we both knew we had little time left together. Mr. Leavitt would soon send someone to take them both north any time now. Can we? I had the floorboard pried up and lowered myself before Caramel could finish asking. You know how we got all the way to Canada? The slave catcher? No. Mama say since she killed that man, his people is coming after us. The master? Ain't him. It's the ones that change people like he did me and Mama. I don't know what you mean. I can't say exactly, except we ain't like we used to be. The daylight is hard on us and we have to. Here she stopped and I almost wanted to stay silent. Something in her voice made me afraid. Through the slats of the floor light filtered down to our hiding place, floating on the bits of hay. Her arms were tight against me, and I wanted to feel her breath on my neck as she spoke. That hateful man took our lives. First, he was messing with me, which Mama said was shameful. Then he took our lives. What does that mean? He made it so we have to drink blood to stay alive. Caramel said it in that childlike voice that I'd come to love, but the shock of it swept over me. She sensed it and held me closer. Please don't be afraid. I promise I won't hurt you. I never thought you would, Caramel. I just don't understand what you're saying. There's some folks that this is the way they live. Mostly they mean like the one who took us. Kind of like the massa, but worse, because they don't die. I wanted to laugh, but I couldn't. Suddenly I felt too big for the little space below the floorboards, and Caramel's arms were so tight around me I couldn't move. Miss Gilda told Mama everything. That made her feel better for a while, but she's still really scared the others are coming after her. You ain't supposed to kill the one who. Caramel stopped as if she couldn't bear to talk about it anymore, and I nestled in closer to assure her I wasn't afraid, and because it felt so good to have her body close to mine. Want me to show you something? I promise it won't change you. Yes, I said, although the breath gathered in my chest and almost choked off the word. My heart pounded with both fear and anticipation. Caramel leaned up on one elbow and pressed her mouth to mine. It was gentle at first. I'd never had such a kiss. My first response was to be startled. Caramel held on to my shoulders, and her lips were insistent on mine until she said, "Yes, yes," I answered, and her mouth became surprisingly warm. I returned her kiss, and the warmth became a fire that I felt down in the bottom of my stomach and then beyond. I could barely breathe, but was desperate to keep her mouth on mine. I moaned as her mouth slipped away from mine and then to my cheek, down my neck. Now her lips were hot on my skin. I could feel the thing stirring inside me that sometimes came when I had dreams and I only wanted that she not stop. There was a small sharpness at my neck, and then she kissed me again, and I felt as if I was falling into a hole, except I was already in a hole. Caramel's lips were the only things I understood at that moment. She was looking inside my mind or my heart. I could feel that. When she pulled back, she looked at me in the eye and said, "Now you'll always be a part of me, just as you wanted." My eyes were out of focus, and I felt as if the horse that usually occupied the stall was standing directly on me. "Rest. You'll be fine in just a moment. I promise." I didn't take much. Much. That was one of the things Miss Gilda taught me and Mama. That nasty man just liked to kill folks, but Miss Gilda said we don't have to. I slept then and awoke to Father calling my name. His voice had a slight tinge of anxiety, and I realized it must have gotten late. "We have to hurry. Father doesn't like me to play under here anymore." Caramel looked at me carefully as if to make sure I was not ill-affected by our secret moment. "Now I'll always be with you," I said with a smile to reassure her. I did feel a little lightheaded, but nothing else seemed out of order, except I could not stop smiling at Caramel or she at me. "I'm sorry, Father, we were just—" Caramel's mother snatched her from my side. "Mama!" Caramel protested. "Elizabeth, you gave our cousin a scare. She didn't know where you were." "I do apologize, Cousin Delia. We wandered off as I was telling Cousin all my stories." "You didn't fall asleep out there in those woods, did you?" There was a hint of terror in Cousin Delia's voice. "No, Cousin. Time just got away from us. I apologize." "There. All's well that ends well," Father said. "William Shakespeare, 1604. I answered with more pride, because Caramel could witness my scholarship. I could tell Father wasn't angry, because he played our game, throwing titles and quotations from texts I'd been studying, and he beamed when I got it right. "What's that?" Caramel asked. "Let's have our last supper together, and Elizabeth, who loves to tell stories so much, will tell you all about William Shakespeare." I was extremely sad and happy at the same time. I could already feel how I missed Caramel, but I was also relieved that she would be taken north out of harm's way, slave catchers or the family of the evil man. "I'll be sorry to see you leave us, cousins," Father said. His voice made me understand that he was as lonely in this life as I was. "There's a bit of activity lately, so we're sorry for the delay. But tomorrow evening you'll be on your way and safe and sound before you know it." "Mama, I felt safe here." "I know, gal, but you can see we ain't. And if we stay, they won't be either. I believe Elizabeth has a little gift she made for you, cousin. We want you to always remember us." I reluctantly pulled the apron from beneath the covers on Father's bed. It wasn't completely finished, and worse, when it was done, I knew they were gone for sure. "I just have a few more stitches and it's finished, if you want it." Caramel squealed with joy when she held the little apron to her heart. We sat talking about the road, what Father could tell them about the way to Canada, things he'd heard from Mr. Leavitt. I finished the hem, turned over the ends of the apron strings, and Caramel tried it on. "I'm sorry there wasn't time to make you a new dress." "Oh, this is much better for traveling. And if I get a new dress, I'll make sure it matches this pretty color." For the first time, Caramel's mother's face washed with a full and brilliant smile. The soft knock on our door startled us all, as if it had been the crack of a cannonball. The smile on Cousin Delia's face slid away and was replaced with a look of terror and then fierceness I'd never seen. A visitor at this hour was rare unless there was some trouble, and the conductor wasn't due until tomorrow. Mr. Freeman? Father was surprised to hear his name. Everyone in town just called him by his Christian name except the Quakers, who called everyone Mr. and Miss. He opened the door more puzzled than afraid. A remarkable woman stood there in men's breeches and jacket with a hat in her hand. At first I thought she was white. Her skin was fair and almost translucent, much like Cousin Delia's, but even more so. Yet around the edges I could see an almost bronze tone beneath her skin that told me she was a mulatto, and I could tell who it was by the catch of Caramel's breath. Mr. Freeman, I apologize for the lateness of the hour, but may I come in? Uh-oh. Hey, I don't know if you guys can hear me, but it looks like the camera just disconnected and I'm not quite sure why. So somebody give me a comment and let me know if you can hear us. Okay, just taking a minute to try and okay, cool. So thank you, Mika, for letting me know that you can hear me. Not quite sure what happened here. There's always something, ain't it? Welcome to the world of live entertainment, folks. Give me just a minute. Even if we can't get the video back up, matter of fact, tell you what I'm going to do. Let's just go ahead and we're not going to worry about the camera. If you can still hear, we're going to keep it going like this. All right. So, yeah, we're just going to keep it moving. Mr. Freeman, I apologize for the lateness of the hour, but may I come in? Of course, Father said before Cousin Delia could say anything, although it was clear that she had intended to protest. Ah, my cousins, good. May I ask? Of course. Again, I apologize, Mr. Freeman, for interrupting your final evening, but it's impossible for them to stay here another minute. I rushed to Caramel's side and grabbed her hand. She clutched my little apron in her other hand as if it was gold. What do you want with us? Cousin Delia sputtered. I want only to protect you. You know they're after you. Slave catchers? Close? Father was immediately suspicious. However, it was sorely uncommon for us to see many other colored people, especially a woman alone dressed as a man. We both had the impulse to put more wood in the stove and spend the night exchanging stories. Worse, she answered quickly. Madam, my father said sternly, I assure you there is no worse than the slave catcher. There is a bounty on their heads, and the return of their bodies would be just as rewarding. Cousin Delia flinched as the words fell on her. Bounty? Why? I'm afraid we don't have time for the full story, cousin. Tell them it's true so that we may make our way before it's too late. Or do you wish to see the blood of your host shed as well? I started to cry because I couldn't bear to be separated from Caramel, and I hoped for the briefest moment that they might take me with them. Caramel straightened beside me. Elizabeth, please stop crying. Mama knows we got to go with Miss Gilda. You know each other then? Father was a bit relieved, although still puzzled. I hate leaving you, Elizabeth, but she right. Caramel's voice was sweet but firm, as if she knew she had to make the decision for her mother, who was paralyzed with fear. But where will you go? The words evaporated before I could say them. Not knowing where Caramel would be seemed like a life much too bleak to comprehend. Dear Elizabeth, you really are true, aren't you? The woman Gilda said to me and smiled her sincerity. You mustn't be sad. I've a wonderful place for our cousins, and it's perfect. Do you know why? No? I tried to stop sniffling and be as grown up as my dear friend to whom I was still clinging. Well, it's perfect because it has the same name as she does. So deep in your heart, you'll always know where she is. Can we see each other again? I asked. My confusion was apparent. That is possible. Here Miss Gilda looked also sad. If so, it will not be for a long time. But you mustn't worry. Are you ready? She turned to Cousin Delia, who was locked inside her fear. Even Caramel has learned more quickly than you. Miss Gilda's voice remained soft but carried a hard edge that was chilling. Take only what you need and leave something in exchange. You will be able to live and not like the others. You must believe me. Cousin Delia's stillness broke and she turned to take up her cloak. We'll make a wide circle leading away from this farm and head north. Once we're in another territory, you'll be safe. How can you be sure? Father asked, not really clear what he was asking. I've seen this before. The bounty will be void as long as they don't return to this territory. All right, cousins, let's pack up some of that meat that was in the stew and the rest of the bread. Oh, that's the father speaking. All right, cousins, let me pack up some of the meat that's in that stew and the rest of the bread. That won't be necessary, Miss Gilda said, adding quickly, I've nourishment hidden along the route. You've been a true cousin, Mr. Freeman, Cousin Delia finally said. We thank you and Miss Elizabeth for your kindness. Caramel threw her arms around my neck and kissed me where she had taken my blood and whispered, I left something in exchange. Miss Gilda watched us closely all the while, speaking in a bare whisper that was almost mesmerizing. No one should follow. And if anyone asks, you will have no recollection of our whereabouts. I've already communicated with Mr. Levitt, so there's no need to speak with him. All's well that ends well, eh? With that, she smiled at me and put her arm around Cousins Delia and Caramel, sweeping them out the door beside her. And thus endeth the story. So, y'all, I would love to be able to show you the cover again, but I'm not sure the camera's working. Let's see if we've got the camera back. Nope, the camera is still off, and that's okay. That's all right. I'm going to keep working on it here behind the scenes while we talk a little bit. But what you just heard was From Black to the Future. And who was that who made that recommendation? Who was it that said that Jewel Gomez was the ish? Because, man, listen. This story, Caramel 1864, From Black to the Future, I think that was a great way to start this book. You know, I was Black from the future. I'm sorry. I was fully expecting, you know, with it being Black speculative writing, that we were going to head into the areas of we're going to head into the areas of like sci-fi and magical realism. The idea of starting with a historical type story and a slave narrative at that, or something akin to a slave narrative, was really surprising. And so I kept waiting. I was like, well, when we going to get the spaceships and the robots? So I want to thank Latricia Ransom, also known as Olive and Boo, for that recommendation. Much appreciated. It was a great, great story. Before that, from Dark Matter, Reading the Bones, we heard Anansi Meets Peter Parker at the Taco Bell on Lexington, which was a quick, fun, really energetic read, lots and lots of energy. And we also heard two pieces of poetry from Black from the Future, both of those by Vernita Hall. The first one was Nightcrawler, and the second one was Tidal Wave. So lots and lots of reading, lots and lots of different experiences tonight. I'm happy. I'm really pleased with what we went through and what we explored together, and I hope you are too. I know that I was able to put up the link that one of our admin found earlier for Dark Matter, Reading the Bones. Let me see. Hold on a second. I think we might have a camera again. We gonna see. Hold up. Hey, let me see if my camera's still on. All right, I think might be a little cockeyed, but that's all right. Let's see if we got a camera again. Boom. There we go, y'all. All right, so glad y'all are still here with us. So let me see what some of your comments were. Running back, I know there was a lot of conversation. How could there not be? Because it was really, really dope. First of all, I want to thank Melanin Monroe for inviting her fam to come through. That was really dope. I really appreciate it. So it's good to see Ashanti. And I saw Will was in the space. It's good to see Will. Let's see. First Angel thought it was albinos. I was chuckling because Latricia caught that look when I figured out what was going on. I was like, mm-hmm. Yeah, no. It don't take me too long to figure out when vampires is in the situation. I'm like, nope, I'm not inviting nobody in. Absolutely not. Angel pulled this line. It was like they were trying to understand the world when they had only been living in it underwater. Yes, that line was so dope. It almost had an odor. That was a dope line. It was a dope line. I don't know what Will's mad about, but I'm glad to see you here in the space, Will. I am guessing right about the time. Yeah. I knew they were vampires. I knew it. Yes. Yes. I think a lot of us figured out pretty early on. But let's see. Erica says, child, what a life to have. Can you imagine if our ancestors had been vampires during slavery? She said, if. Child, the Civil War would have been won a lot sooner. And goodness, the rampages they would have had. Oh, massacre. You know what? No, I'm not doing this with you. I'm not doing this with you. Yes, Ashanti, make sure that you subscribe on YouTube and comment, because you could win the lit bag. It is filled with books. You can start now. One comment. But yeah, what she said, Angel breaking down the rules for how it needs to go down. So I'm loving all the speculation about how the war would have popped off had our ancestors indeed been vampires. Yeah. It's the Warriors. Y'all ain't got no good sense. I'm over here trying to read this story, and y'all over here straight clowning in the comments. I love it though. I love it. What if Nat Turner and Harriet Tubman had been vamps? There is what is it? There's a graphic novel that actually trades somewhere in this. It is about Harriet Tubman. I believe she's a vampire slayer or a demon slayer, but it's a supernatural take on Harriet Tubman as a killer of evil beasts, and I think she's like a daywalker or something like that. But yeah, I believe this might be it. I'm not sure. We'll come up with the answer for that. Ashanti said this is a lively chat. It is a lively chat. They over here cracking up tonight. They cutting the Gilda stories by Joel Gomez. Okay, so there's more. This is okay. So this is from Gilda's World, but not that book. Okay, so there is more to that. So we will look into that and see about adding that to the shelf, because I can't front. This was really, really dope. I enjoyed it a lot. Let's see what Erica has to say here. All I know is the abolitionists would have had a seriously different look with Frederick Douglass as a vamp. You can either catch these fangs. I'm done. I'm not even reading it out loud no more. I am so through with all of this. I got to tell you, it is really one of my favorite things when we do this show. When we do this show and we stumble across the story that gets this kind of conversation going, and y'all are just over there on the sidebar, just cutting up in the cut. I love it. I love it. I might, I'll sit here and play the role of, oh, I can't believe it. In my heart of hearts, I love this so much. The more engaged you are with the story, the more that it triggers your imaginations, the more that it fuels your conversations, the more excited I am to keep doing this work that we do here at Storytime with Julian, which is, again, the celebration and elevation of Black literature. And if you love what we do, then please let me encourage you to continue encouraging us. You can do that by following, by sharing our pages, by making a post every once in a while that lets people know I do this thing on Tuesdays and Thursdays called Storytime with Julian, and it's lit and it's fun and it's blackety black and it's all those good things. And you can let people know how much you appreciate this thing. You can follow us on Facebook, and that's just Storytime with Julian. You can find our Twitter at Storytime Julian. You can find us on Instagram at Storytime Julian. YouTube is where most of you are, but in case you need a reminder, go on and hit that subscribe, mash that button, make sure you hit that bell so that you get the updates. I don't make promos like I used to for the time being. They'll be coming back. So I might not always let you know there's a show, but if you don't want to miss it and you want to be reminded, hey, Julian about to do that thing where he be reading Black books and whatnot, go ahead and mash that bell on YouTube and that'll happen for you. And listen, should you feel so inclined, me and talk good. Should you feel so inclined and you want to continue to support what we do, help us put some books on the shelves, help us, get some extra books so that we can do the gifts. If you want to just contribute so that your boy is not completely exhausted trying to make this thing happen, you can always tip the griot and help support Storytime with Julian at Cash App using the cash tag Storytime Julian. And there will be some more opportunities in different ways to help support Storytime with Julian coming real soon. And as this overlay says, thank you so much for rocking with us. This is the thing that we love doing. We love sharing this Black literature with you. We love sharing these good stories. And man, I got to tell you, like nights like tonight, where we kind of discover some dope stuff together. Like these are my favorite nights. I love, this is one of the most exciting things about having new books to pull from is you never know what you're gonna get. And when you land on some stuff that hits kind of like gold, like tonight did, it's everything. That story, Anansi Meets Peter Parker at the Taco Bell on Lexington, was by Douglas Kearney. I'm gonna look up some more stuff by Douglas Kearney because I can't front. I really like that writing style. It reminded me a little bit. Some of you all might remember a story that we did on one of the Storytime with Julian After Dark. The story was called Nasty Little Thing by Pierre Thomas. And there was something in the rhythm of how this was written that put me in the mind of what Pierre Thomas was doing in that story. But I have to tell you, I think Douglas Kearney did it with greater effect. I think he did it much more successfully. And I was excited about that. I know some of you have already read Afro Puffs Are the Antenna of the Universe by Zigzag Claiborne. If you have, that's one of the books that I'm looking to pull from real soon. If you have, and there's an excerpt from it that you'd like to recommend, I'm open to taking recommendations. Go ahead and put that in our, you can go ahead and message us with that on Facebook, or you can hit us up on Twitter with your recommendation. Just give me the page number and the range and let me know, because I'm definitely open to, I'm open to suggestions on that. I know we can't read the whole book, working on that. But I want to read a good chunklet of it so that y'all can get into it. This has been episode 92 of Storytime with Julian. We are working our way to the countdown toward episode 100. Once episode 100 hits, we are going to take a shorter, not a whole month, but we are going to take a brief hiatus. We're going to change up a few things. We're going to come back to you with some new faces and some new things going on. But I'm so excited to have you all here with us for episode 92. We will see you next Tuesday. This has been Storytime with Julian. I have been your host and lead griot, Julian Long. To everybody who came out, thank you so much. Continue to support Black literature, and we'll catch you real soon. All right? Peace.